The Miracle of Our Lady of Nazareth, 1182, Portugal. The Miracle of Our Lady of Nazaré has it that on the early morning of September 14, 1182, Dom Fuas Roupinho, alcalde of Porto de Mós, Portugal, was out hunting in his domain, near the coast, when he saw a deer which he immediately began chasing. All of a sudden a heavy fog rose up from the sea. The deer, later suspected to be the devil in the guise of a deer, jumped off the edge of the hilltop into the empty void. Despite his efforts to stop his horse, the spirited mount was determined to follow after the deer. Helpless to save himself, the rider suddenly recognized that he was near the sacred grotto where he would often come to pray. Fuas Roupinho cried out to the Blessed Virgin, praying aloud, "Our Lady, help me." The horse stopped immediately, as if he were digging his hooves into the rocky cliff above the void. Suspended in an unnatural manner at the edge of the cliff, Fuas Roupinho knew the drop to be over 100 meters, and surely would mean his death if he had fallen. He was then able to back slowly away from the edge, looking down to see the evidence of the impossible and unimaginable, for there in the hard stone was the imprint of one of his horse's hooves. One of those marks can still be seen in the native rock. Dom Fuas dismounted and went down to the grotto to pray and give thanks for the miracle. Then he ordered his companions to fetch masons and order to build a small chapel over the grotto so that the miraculous image could be easily venerated by all and as a memorial to the miracle that saved him. Then before walling up the grotto, the masons destroyed the existing altar, where amongst the stones they found an ivory chest containing some relics and an old parchment describing the story of the little wooden statue, 1 palm high, of Our Lady seated breastfeeding baby Jesus seated on her left leg. According to the parchment, the statue must have been venerated since the beginning of Christianity in Nazareth, in Palestine. It was rescued from the iconoclast in the 5th century by the monk Ciriaco. It was he who brought it to Iberia, to the monastery of Coloniana, near Merida, where it remained until 711, the year of the Battle of Guadalete, when the Christian forces were defeated by the Moorish invading army coming from North Africa. When the news of the defeat arrived at Merida, the friars of Coloniana prepared to leave their monastery. Meanwhile, the defeated king, Roderick, who was able to flee the battlefield alone and disguised as a beggar, anonymously asked for shelter at the monastery. When he asked one of the friars, Friar Romano, to hear him in confession, he had to tell who he really was. Then the friar suggested they flee together, taking with them an old and holy image of Mary with the Enfant venerated at the monastery. So the statue of Our Lady of Nazaré, which received its name from the village in Holy Land where it was first venerated, was brought by Friar Romano and by King Roderick to the Atlantic coast. When they reached their destination, they settled in an empty hermitage on the top of a rocky hill, the Monte di San Bartolomeu, and there they stayed for a few days. They then decided to separate and live by themselves as hermits. The friar took the image and settled in a little grotto, on the edge of a cliff above the sea, next to the hill where the king went on living. A year went by and Roderick decided to leave the region. Friar Romano stayed in his hermitage above the sea until he died. The holy statue, a black Madonna, stayed on the altar where he left it until 1182, when Dom Fuas, after the miracle, moved it to the chapel built over the grotto as a memorial to the event that saved his life. Thus the still existing chapel was named Capella da Memoria, Chapel of the Memory. In 1377, because of the increased number of pilgrims, King Fernando had a church built near the chapel, and transferred the statue there. In the end of the 16th century, this church experienced the first of a series of reconstructions and enlargements. The existing building is now the result of several interventions from the 16th to the 19th centuries that give it a very unusual character. This church or sanctuary is named Santuario di Nossa Senhora da Nazaré, Sanctuary of Our Lady of Nazaré. The holy image is now on display in the main chapel in a small niche above the altar that can be accessed by a staircase leading from the sacristy. Since 711, the statue has remained in the village named after it, Sitio da Nazaré, Place of the Nazaré. In this village, nowadays a quarter of the town of Nazaré, one can still visit the 3 sanctuaries mentioned above, the underground hermitage, the small chapel above it, and the church where one can visit Our Lady of Nazaré. According to oral tradition, the holy icon was sculpted by Saint Joseph the Carpenter, in Nazareth, when Jesus was still a baby. A few decades later Saint Luke the Evangelist painted it. So, it may well be the most ancient image venerated by Christians. Amen.